Gadzooks, it is episode 2199. I win, by the way, Bill Davis. Welcome to Office Hours. Today we're going to talk about some audio stuff. Also, I want to show off that I figured out how to do this. If you're watching, you should ask, if you're watching live, you should ask questions. So look at me, I got the little thing. I got the little QR code. So go to that and you can learn all about how to enjoy the rest of the show. But before we do all that, let's get started. I'm sorry, I don't know who's reading. Is it Courtney or Bill?
Alexander.
That would
or
be
Alexander.
me. First question of this morning is coming from the QR code. Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California asks, got an Allen and Heath T112 console. Need to find the switch to do a factory reset. Where can I find it and how do I use it? The docs aren't that clear.
Marty.
If I remember correctly, the iLive, all the iLive intelligence, the smarts, are in the stage box where the processor is, and the surface is pretty much just a controlling surface. That said, according to the information that I'm seeing, you need to do a reset in three places. There's on the back of the surface itself, there's a recessed port there. It says jumpers. I don't know if it's a actual jumper. It might be a button. There's the stage box itself will have a reset port that probably a hidden button. And then it also says to do a reset on the touch screen, which is probably a software switch.
Next, Mickey.
Yeah, there are those hard buttons on each one, but if you want to just wipe the entire system, the mix engine, which is this, I guess, the stage box that Marty was referring to, the I/O racks, as well as the surface, the quickest way to do it is to, or the least complicated way, perhaps not the quickest way to do it, is to just reflash everything. Download the firmware that you want to use. Usually it would be the latest version of the firmware, but you may have other versions of firmware you want to use for reasons. And just reflash everything. Everything will be zeroed out, and you're good to go. If you just want to reset the parameters of your mix, your input faders, your auxes, your buses, your outputs, you can just load the factory default show file, which should be in your show file list. I don't believe you can overwrite it because it will, as far as I know, it will always be there. But you can just load that factory default profile. But if you want a full system reset that does everything in one go, then reflash your firmware.
Yeah, sometimes it's a good idea to save a default setting that you can load yourself. Yes, there are factory resets. Also, I'll say that on more than one occasion in my career, I have had a piece of equipment that was angry, and sometimes you just look at the panel. A good friend of mine said to me once, try and put yourself in the head of the person who designed the thing. You look at the panel and you go, okay, this thing is ultimately a computer. It probably has a Control-Alt-Delete. What buttons would, if I was designing it, what buttons would I call the Control, Alt, and Delete if I was restarting the thing? And one time it was a single rack unit thing, and I was like, okay, I would have these three buttons. I literally guessed at it, and I hit the three buttons. And I go, hey, turn that thing back on, and it came back to factory reset. And that's a possibility. I don't know how it works with that, but think about that. Give that some thought. Alexander, next question.
All right, this one's coming from Douglas Carmichael. I've been comparing the Grace Design M303s and Rupert Neve Designs RNDI-S as DI boxes for recording my synths. From what I've heard, the Grace is more neutral and the R&D is less so. Is that true?
Mr. Bachet.
I think the word you're looking for is transparent. And yeah, the Grace is designed to be like completely transparent. Kind of what goes in is what comes out. Rupert Neve tend to push, I think it's a Class A Class A second part of the amplifier that does second order harmonics on the lower end, and it's similar to a very subtle tube effect. And yeah, it's supposed to add character.
Mickey?
Yeah, products from R&D and Rupert Neve Designs naturally take their inspiration from actual Rupert Neve products, which are known to add some color to the signal, and that's why they're popular with, specifically for music, because they add that, actually they add distortion, and they add harmonics to the signal that make it not true to what the signal actually is. And comparing R&D's DI box to Grace Designs, they're known. I know them primarily for their monitor control system and also their D2A converters in your monitoring chains, and they're really meant and designed to be very transparent, so that you're hearing what you're actually mixing. So along the same lines, I would expect Grace DI boxes to be the same, be very transparent. So between the two brands, I would inherently just assume that I haven't touched any of the Grace Design DIs, but I've used a lot of R&D DIs. I would assume that the R&Ds would add a lot more color. But at the end of the day, you're trying to capture synths. So what's neutral or natural from synth sounds? Just try them out and listen to it. Don't base things, your purchases, on what you read. Listen to them. Go into Guitar Center and actually put your ears to work and decide which one you like better.
Speaking of Guitar Center, I don't think I've actually heard anything I've mixed well in a long time. My ears aren't as good as they used to be. Alexander, next question.
Okay, next question is coming up from Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri. I'm going to Guitar Center to pick up a low-cost interface to connect an XLR mic, MV7, to my Mac. Are there any pitfalls I need to keep an eye out for?
There's probably a few. Alexander,
going to Guitar Center.
Well, MV7, if you haven't purchased that mic yet, I would suggest you get the the MV7X. That is the version without the USB interface. That's a hybrid microphone. So if you have no plans on ever needing a direct-to-the-computer type of built-in interface, then I would save yourself the money and get the cheaper X version, because that's just analog XLR only, because you're asking specifically about using it with an interface. So any pitfalls? Well, you're going to want to make sure you get a interface with enough gain to amplify that microphone, because with most dynamic microphones like this and many others, this microphone shares similar challenges that the more expensive SM7B brother has, and that's basically extremely low output. And a lot of interfaces these days have decent enough gain, some more so than others, so you'll want to do your research. And then the other question is, what are you going to be using this for? If this is for doing voiceover work, most interfaces work just fine. I can name a few. But if you're going to be doing live streaming or anything like that, you may want to get an interface with a loopback channel on it. And that gives you a lot more flexibility with how you're routing your audio out to your live stream. Not all audio interfaces these days will have it, although more and more interfaces do have loopback. So look out for that when you're researching that. The Lewitt family of audio interfaces have built-in DSP processing, lots of gain on their preamps, and they have loopback channels. Mode 2 has a loopback on their interfaces. Focusrite as well. They're all pretty decent. There's some differentiation between the brands too. Like some of them have better headphone amplifiers than others. I would actually recommend you go to YouTube, look up Julian Krause. That's Krause with a K. He does these incredible breakdowns of these interfaces. I don't know if he's an electronics engineer, but he opens up these interfaces and he examines all the components and chips and does all these incredible detailed charts. And he's got this running chart where he basically shows you the amount of headphone output power that all these interfaces have. So if you plan on using high-end open back headphones with high impedance, that's something to look out for, because that can become a challenge. Like I've got a pair of high-end headphones here that have 450 ohms impedance. You can't just plug that into a laptop and get any kind of decent volume out of it. So do some research as well on that.
Ronnie.
Yeah, so I have this MV7 Plus that is really a good thing, and as already been said, the thing is when you're using the USB interface and the built-in DSP in these microphones, you are depending on the software that Shure is providing for you. But the good thing is that you can preset it and just send it out. So we have a lot of MV6s as well. And the only thing that is bothering me with these microphones is the touch sensor here. When you touch it, you can eventually mute it, and that is not a good thing. But pre-NAB here, I got some news that you might be thinking of. The Shure company is releasing SM7 AI, which is actually introducing some new AI things, and they have something called intent correction engine, and the AI is actually just modifying
just what my
your
mic
intent.
needs.
Yeah, and,
What does that
it's,
mean?
Of course,
It's a bit expensive though, but I would have a look at that as well.
that's good. Wait, hold on. Let us remind ourselves. This is April.
What date?
April
What
1st.
date it is today?
That's fake. That's fake.
My
I think
intention is to have it look good.
it might
Do
even
that for me.
It might even still be April 1st in Australia. No, that's fake. Funny, but fake. I totally got suckered into that. Jeff Cohen.
Well, I'll give you a two-part answer. So first of all, one of the pitfalls, I think, as Jason mentioned, is going to Guitar Center. So a couple reasons not to do that. First of all, really, I mean, not to discredit them, but most of the people that work there, their focus is on music, musicians. The depth of their knowledge, for the most part, will be to that end versus perhaps what you're looking for. I'll also say that if it is in fact just the MV7, you've got that mic, and to the point of what Alexander is saying, if you're not going to swap it out, I mean, you have a decent enough interface, I would say, on par with the microphone. So plug a USB cable into it. The benefit is if you then put the Shure Motive software on your computer, you get a fair bit of control. Now, I don't remember, to Ronnie's point, so the Motive software does have a switch actually that lets you disable that touch mute function. I don't know if it works on that one versus the 7 Plus, but at least take a look. And it's got other cool features like adjusting your headphone mix of source audio versus your microphone. And it's got a lot of cool functions aside from other DSP control. It's also cool that all those settings stay in the microphone and persistent even after you unplug it and all that good stuff. So very cool. Again, I would say go with that. But if you are just hell-bent on driving somewhere, then I will say, don't do that also. And if you are hell-bent on getting an interface, is what I meant to say, is check out Sweetwater. If you have not, they have, I would say, much more knowledgeable, as they call them, experts, and they tend to stay your expert until they move on. So that's cool. You get to build a relationship with them. You get to talk about more in depth what you're looking for. And then they'll help you. There's going to be a bigger selection because you're ordering online, and you have a whole category of audio interfaces. And again, they're not going to be tailored exclusively for band musician use. They'll be perhaps more tailored to your needs.
Mickey, bring us home.
Yeah, Vic, if you are looking for something simple that almost directly replaces the USB interface built into your MV7, or take a look at the Shure MVX2U, because it is an interface made by Shure. It also uses the Motive Mix application, so it is almost a direct replacement for it. Even the UI is, if you're already very comfortable with Motive Mix, then you're right there. If you are looking for something, with a bit more capability, I would probably look into an interface with its own, mix engine inside, so that you can route different applications or sources to different inputs into the interface, and send different applications to, a different set of speakers, your comms to, your one set of headphones or one set of outputs, your Zoom into another set of outputs. And that's what I use here. Like, I have certain intercom channels that route to a speaker above me, and more important intercom channels right to a speaker that's just in front of me right here. And I'm able to prioritize what I'm listening to, just simply based on, localizing where it's coming from. If it's something to the back and above me, it's less important to me. And if it's something I really need to pay attention to, it's right in front of me. Having a lot of outputs gives you that flexibility. Um, yeah, as mentioned earlier, enough gain for your specific use case is important. But look at the I/O if you want to grow into something larger than just 2 and 2 out.
Great. Let's see. I got a note in my ear. I want it. Again, I mentioned this earlier. If you're watching this, you're missing half the show. There is this QR code. Use it. Learn about logging in while we're doing the show live, not just watching it on YouTube. You can get a login for the Mukana app, which is where we ask the questions. And there's a whole world of chat back there. A whole bunch of other stuff going on. So take a look at that. You can also go to officehours.global, where you can just what is it? officehours.global, where you can ask a question, but /join. That's not on. Oh, it is there. /join. I can't read well. Anyway, Alexander, what's the next question?
This question is coming in from Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA. What types of mics and how would you place them to improve the sound of 40 kids singing in a house of worship? I'll have the same challenge again and want to do better.
Mickey.
Yeah. I don't know what the budget is like, but I would go with very similar placement to what you have in your video. And just for reference, this is what the guy was linking to. You have a couple of looks like pencil condenser microphones spread around the choir here. I would go with similar placement, but go with a wide cardioid from Shep's. I'm a fan of the MK41. The MK4 capsules are a wider pickup pattern. They're cardioid pickup patterns, as opposed to the MK41's super cardioid. This is part of their Colette series, which is a modular system. So you can get a whole bunch of different accessories for mounting them. You have a whole bunch of booms. You can attach the capsules to all sorts of ways to hang them from above. Little swivel adapters if you want them. They're very very configurable. They're module system, as I mentioned earlier. In terms of placement, I think the biggest change I would do would be to back them off of the kids, because from listening to this earlier, it sounded like we were capturing a couple of kids like really prominent and present up front. So that tells me that the microphone is probably too close to a single performer. So back the mics off a bit so that you get more of a cohesive capture of the entire group, as opposed to focused on an individual. When you do that, you may also want to add a bit more mics, if budget permits, so that you have a more even capture of the group as a whole.
So I'm going to interrupt here just for a second. So Mickey, I agree. if you move the mic away, you won't highlight a single person. If you gave everybody a mic, it'd be awesome. Unlikely. Most churches don't have 40 sheps in a drawer somewhere. They might have a couple. But if the question that I'd be curious to know, and maybe Guy can answer in the chat, is, Guy, are you also are you just trying to record the kids, or are you also amplifying the kids? So Mickey, when you move the mics further away and you don't have a lot of gain and you're trying to let the people in the back hear, now you're going to get a bunch of feedback. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, certainly. You'd get less gain before feedback if you push the mics further away, and also get mics that have a wider pickup pattern. But in a room like this, especially in a house of worship, which is typically designed to reverberate the sound of what's coming from the front of the room, you would probably want to encourage your performers to project into the room, so that you barely need to amplify their vocal microphones, and only use the microphones primarily for your broadcast or recording or your stream, whatever you're doing.
Ronnie, what's your thoughts?
Yes, I've done this a couple of times, not necessarily in the house of worship, but I agree with what Mickey says. The reverberation in the room will also help or destroy the audio. What I tend to do is I use a microphone like this, and this is not a fake microphone, by the way. This is the EN14. And these microphones, they are not expensive. They're not. They're also not cheap. But we have two of those. I place them on a single stand, 1/3 in from each side. So I divide the stage in three identical parts. And I place this in the crosshair between those thirds. And I only use two. And the reason for that is to avoid phasing problems, picking up audio on both microphones. And I have them 1/3 from each other. And I also have them the similar distance from the back row. And I have them a little bit higher than the back row. And I aim them towards the back row. And that way, these microphones will pick up the back row almost at identical level as the front row, which is then becoming a little bit out of the main lobe of the microphone, of the pickup pattern for the microphone. And that way, I get a coherent sound. And of course, what's had been mentioned, the problem is if you're using this not for recording, but for PA, you almost always need to have the microphones a little bit closer than you are during recording. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, Guy says that he has an audience of 1,000 people, and it is primarily a sound reinforcement, but of course they want to give a recording to the parents afterwards. Marty, your input.
All right, well, let's take a look at what we actually have here to start with. Now, this might be a little bit difficult to see, so I'll point things out. I see two microphones on stands right around here. Yeah, these are too close to the kids. You're just going to pick up, 3 kids for each microphone. Then I see what looks like possibly a shotgun microphone here, which is in the back corner, pointing behind everybody, pointing down in this direction. I see a microphone on a stand here that is above and in front of the gentleman singing. And then I see 2 shotgun microphones here. Looks like it is in front of the 3rd row from the back, probably pointing towards the rear. I see a couple of microphones way off to the side here that don't look like they're being used. So there's a variety of microphones. Some are coming at the audience, at the singers from the back, some from the front. These are probably to highlight the back row. But I don't see anything picking up these kids here or the center. And that's part of the problem, is that we don't have an overall view of the entire choir. So one of my favorite microphones, it's a little bit more budget-friendly than a Schoeps, would be the Audio-Technica's BP4025. This is a stereo microphone. It's got 2 capsules in one body. It sounds really good. It's an XY microphone, and if you were to put that right up in front at about this height, pointing down, it would pick up both sides of the choir. And you want to get it high enough so that it's not spotlighting anybody in particular. That will give you a really nice overall sound. Now, for PA, that's a really good question. Looking at the room itself, let's see, there was a wide shot of the room here. There we go. Coming right up. I don't see any loudspeakers here, which makes it kind of tough to make that call as to whether, gain or feedback would be a problem, because I just don't see where the loudspeakers are. If I don't see anything about it in the chat, but yeah, that would always be a consideration. So take it from there. So an overall view of the choir, something that picks up the choir in general. So shotgun microphones are going to be too pointed. They're too narrow for pickup. A standard cardioid microphone would be a better choice at the right distance. But the stereo microphone, as I pointed out, would be one microphone that would pick up the entire choir as long as gain before feedback is not a problem.
It dawned on me, somebody should make one of those Apple goggle apps where you can walk around a room, look at a microphone, and then step back and it overlays its pickup pattern in the room, like with a ghosty red.
That would be really cool.
Right? This microphone will hear this much stuff. This mic, you just walk around, you get a good look at it, it recognizes what mic it is, and then it goes, oh, that pickup pattern is like
so
this.
That's why it's called cardioid.
No,
that's
cool?
that's the AI intention filter.
There. Got me again.
Courtney, what's your thought on this?
I mostly concur. I would say a cardioid condenser, a small diaphragm cardioid condenser as opposed to a large diaphragm cardioid condensers with a small profile as you can, because you don't want to disturb the sightline of the choir. I noticed in the picture there that they had the younger children down front. So you want to make sure that the microphones that are at the front are not necessarily very close to those young children, because they can sing off key and it kind of really upsets them. And the larger adults are at the back. So perhaps up in the air like you did, and about the recommendations from Shure, and I wouldn't use SM58s in this, but this is what the kind of picture is a distance between 3 microphones if you're that wide a choir. Less microphones, the better, they say, 2 or maximum of 3. 3 feet from the front of the choir and 9 feet between them, and elevated up to the height of the person in the back row and pointed at them as a cardioid condenser. I think that's going to be one of your best ways to mic them. You got to be careful, unless you're going to have soloists. If you're going to have a soloist, have them have a separate cardioid, maybe a dynamic microphone for the soloist up front that they're really close to, so you can isolate them and bring them in at a good level to stand out for your sound amplification in the room. But that's my suggestion, and the ratios between the mics is important to keep them equidistant, and have the patterns of the microphone overlapping and elevated enough, as was said, so you don't get as many people, anyone sticking out like a sore thumb, and tell the people that sing off key just to mime. That's the best. That's my.
Yeah, it's a tough conversation to have with somebody. Alexander, what can you add to this?
Yeah, and so just a couple of things. If, without knowing the budget, if you don't have budget for high-end microphones like some of the stuff mentioned,
like the drawer full of Sheps that
I'm not going to suggest Sheps. I have had fantastic results with the Universal Audio SP1 mics. They come as a stereo pair. Now, the SP1s, which is this mic right here, which I'll switch to, $349 US for the pair. Now, there are other microphones that are cheaper. There are other microphones around the similar price. I've tested a lot of microphones. These ones have really low self-noise. They have a really nice warm sound, pick up a lot of detail. The cool thing about these mics is Universal Audio designed them to be sort of a recreation of the original Neumann KM84 microphones. The KM84s, they don't make them anymore. The new version, the 184, is a transformerless version. This has a transformer. So it has a really great sound. I've used these on choirs as in both space pairs and XY stereo configs. I've used them in acoustic pianos. They sound really, really great. Now, they come actually, for the money, it's a great deal because in the box, there's a little stereo mounting bar, so you can do an XY mic config really
Click on the
easily.
second icon down there.
Yeah, there it is. Right there. There's a little stereo mounting bar that they kind of just throw in the box. Now, a couple other things. My suggestion would be to standardize and have the same microphones consistent in the whole setup. You'll really want to minimize how many microphones now, because we know the PA is in the ceiling, which, by the way, that's a whole separate conversation. That's not good to have down-firing speakers.
Yeah, Guy told us that in the chat, that it's a whole bunch of speakers in the
Yeah, that's a separate conversation that you should probably reevaluate the PA system. If it was me, I would disable those speakers. But as far as the placement is concerned, what I would also suggest now that I know that the speakers are also down firing. You got to remember too that these microphones are these ones, the SP ones that I'm recommending here. These ones are cardioid, right? So they're directional. So where you get the most amount of rejection is the null point on the back of the microphone, which is 180 degrees off axis. If I go back to the microphone, here's the end of the capsule where you talk into it. This is the back of the microphone. The back of the microphone is where you want to have that thing pointed at where all the noise is. So because the speakers are also down firing, right, you got sound blasting you from the top here. What I would suggest is that you get some really, really tall booms that can extend way out here and put the microphone with the facing right down at these people, so that the null point is actually facing the ceiling where the actual sound is coming from. So that'll help mitigate some of the feedback issues. And then, of course, there are other things you can do as far as the EQ is concerned. Use your high pass and low pass filters really aggressively, but that's a whole conversation for another day.
Mickey, what can wrap it up?
Yeah, 100%. Don't use those in-ceiling speakers if you're running into gain before feedback issues. If you are, then I would certainly add either line array or point source systems along with delay speakers. You mentioned it was a guy mentions it's 1,000 person room. So you may most likely want to add delay speakers to get better coverage all across until the rear of the room. Another option for microphones that I might recommend is the Shure SM81 little cardioid pencil condenser microphones. Again, small diaphragm microphone. It's about $400 US now. It used to be much cheaper when I got these things 15 years ago, but just another option for you.
All right. Sorry that took so long, but Guy, I hope that helps. We can, and I have more to say to you. I'll talk to you later. Alexander, next question.
Okay, this one is coming in from Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York. Any first thoughts on ZoomISO 3 beta, likes, dislikes, ready for in-production testing yet, or wait?
What do you say, Ronnie?
I just tested it for the last day or so. I have had no crashes. It looks really promising. And for those that doesn't know what ZoomISO version 3 is, that is actually one way to connect an application running on Mac into a Zoom meeting or Zoom webinar and actually extract video feeds and audio feeds and do stuff with it. One of the things that you can do with it is to have multiple routing for audio coming out of the Zoom room. As you can see here, I've just added a lot of different hardware devices. The top one is the stereo output for my Mac Minis. The other one is the LG monitor I'm connected to. Then I have the Blackmagic, so I can send any of these types of outputs going to each of these channels, and I can have a participant audio ISO. I can have mix. I can have mix of unassigned participants. and audio coming in from active shares, etc. And one of the new things is that you don't have the necessarily aggregated audio device. You can have multiple audio devices in your audio output. Another thing that is really, really cool is to have everything looking like this on a panel in front of you. You can see each participant, and you can decide where you are going to put that signal. You can put it on NDI, and one of the new things, of course, here in V3 is that you can have HX3 as well, which is really high quality signal. Of course, you will not get any better signal that you get from Zoom, but that is using the media enhanced media add-on package is giving you up to 12 megabits of bandwidth for those videos. And as you might know, also up to 60 frames per second. And even if you don't have 60 frames per second, you can, in the case you have 60 frames per second, you can also decide which quality you are going to send out from your system. And one thing I've been looking at is there are 4K signals here. So what's going on here? And of course, you have different. This is not connected to a live meeting, but you can have that set to auto or defined, and you can easily change. Of course, you have the old one as well, which is the list where you can do all this stuff, and of course you can also do recording of ISO channels. Even in ProRes, I remember, even if that was LT. So just make sure you have a disk that is really, really fast, and this is recording live into your own disks or NAS.
So cool.
Yeah, but the best thing about this, the absolute best thing about this, and everyone is missing that, it seems, is the pricing structure. So what I did is, if you are just having one Pro account at Zoom, and then purchase the enhanced media account, that is not a lot of money. And for that combination, you get access to all the liminal tools, which includes ZoomISO version 3, Zoom OSC, tiles, etc., etc. And that is so affordable for anyone to start using. So if you haven't done that already, download a beta and start testing. That is so awesome to be doing.
Yeah, this looks really, really cool. I think the gang at Zoom knocked it out of the park. Mickey, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Office Hours has been testing out the V3 for a couple weeks or months now. Yeah, we haven't deployed the Gold Master, we'd call it. But for me, the biggest annoyance, I guess, is the UI, where it seems to be a lot more Fisher Price little tykes looking, like big, a lot of empty space.
Harsh.
Whereas I guess they're trying to follow some design language that Apple is doing. Whereas in the past we would have a lot of like density of information and configuration, like in a single window without having to scroll. You'd have so much packed in there. Now you kind of like, okay, scroll down. Oh, I need to set channel number 32. I need to scroll down even more. No, that's a personal thing. I like just having everything right there in front of me, so I don't have to mess around with UIs and just get work done. In terms of just going back to Scott's question, I hope, Scott, what you mean by in production testing is having a separate system running in parallel to your actual production infrastructure, as opposed to installing it and, hey, we're going to use this production as a test. Like, no, like have a totally separate R&D system to test with before you put things in your production environment.
Yeah. Without giving away too much, I know that we have multiple tech stacks that we use around the country to produce this show, and we are pushing ahead on one of them, and I think we're going to stay with what we currently have on another tech stack. But it's about, stability and making sure that, sometimes pushing forward means you're going to invest a whole lot of, R&D time trying to fix something. Alexander, let's go to the next question, please.
This one is from Nicholas McKinney in Johnson City. I have my first wedding that a client wants recorded. The wedding will be outside. What is the best way to pick up the audio? I have Sony cameras, an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, and will be running MimoL live. Should I bring my Rodecaster Pro 2?
Mickey, do you have any experience picking up remote audio live?
I find it interesting that the question asks about picking up audio, and most of the gear listed are video equipment. That's a little worrying for myself. But if ever you are able to budget money for an A1, someone to solely focus on just the audio side of things, I would highly, highly recommend that. There is no take two and something like this. You can't say like one more for safety. Like, no, you have to get it right when it happens. So highly recommend someone who can focus on getting that job done and done right and done well. Look, if you are able to budget for good RF, good wireless, stick a mic on the groom. There's some brides that will allow you. I've been in situations where brides have allowed us to mic them up. But in most situations, we could only mic the groom. Sometimes the person presiding as well try to mic them up. And in addition to that, I assume you're not handling the PA system. So talk to the vendor that's handling PA and try to get splits off of their mics, assuming they have something like a handheld that they're going to pass around. Get a split of that so that you have a second source for your audio that you can fade up if something happens to your RF. But just don't risk don't mess around with someone's wedding. Get it done right.
We've actually hid mics in the bouquet. Bill Davis.
So, yeah, most weddings, though, don't have those kind of budgets. And I think if this is your first one, it may be friends or somebody, and you just want to do a good basic job. So understand you've got three kind of zones of this. You've got everything pre-ceremony. I'm going to assume this is a standard male-female religious or civil ceremony. So you got the pre-thing where everybody's coming in, and you want to go around with something, and usually an on-camera mic, something that you can walk around, get ambience, and then if you need to talk to somebody, if you need to get to the groom and say, are you nervous, you can put it in their face and get the mic close to them that way. That'll get you a good recording right to your recording media. Then you've got the ceremony, and the ceremony is where we're talking about usually bride and groom up at the front with an officiant. I've seen wireless mic put on the officiant and one on the groom, because the groom will let you, Mickey's point was well taken, the bride often is very carefully dressed and they don't want you messing with anything there. So you don't want to get around that. And then past the reception, the ceremony, you're into the reception. And that's another place where you really want to talk about getting audio and video of everyone there. This is their big moment. Everybody I know who worked in the wedding industry said that I'm going to try to cover everything I can. I want to make sure that everyone who's there, their face is on this, because even if the average viewer of this cut down videotape doesn't know who this guy in the back row is, the bride and the groom afterwards you go, oh, Uncle Tommy got there. Wasn't that great to see him again? And they'll have 2 minutes of talking about Uncle Tommy. So the long full-featured thing, just make sure you get everybody who shows up, every part of that, because people, as has been said, are obsessive about their ceremony. This is for them forever. So just work your butt off, get to every part of this, shoot everything you possibly can, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, it sounds like Nicholas, like you're thinking of bringing a lot of stuff to set up on a table. Definitely think about that. You're going to get in the way.
Yeah, it's a run and gun world out there.
Marty, what can you add to this?
Really, I was going to say that you really, it's important to understand in advance what sound you will want to pick up. You need to understand and work with the wedding planner or the bride and groom. What is the flow? What is the program going to be? What is the flow? Where are people going to be? When are they going to be? What is the where is the ceremony going to take place? What is that going to look like? What props are going to be there? Is there going to be an archway? Is there going to be a table with a bouquet? Someplace you can hide a microphone? Is this is this going to be on a windy day or in an area that is known to be windy, like on a beach, right? Can be a huge problem because you will need to have heavy reinforcement for wind suppression on your microphones. Once you understand what the program is going to be, where people are going to be and when, and what you are intending to capture, only then can you determine what it is you're going to need in terms of equipment in order to capture that. Now, there's the typical flow, and Bill did a really good job of laying out the, stereotypical wedding, if that's what you're going to do. And I wouldn't presume there is going to be a PA system. If there is going to be a PA system, then definitely work with that provider for the ceremony itself. You can maybe, share microphones and share feeds. But if not, then you're it. And you need to be able to pick up everything that's there. So preparation is the key here. You need to prepare. Well-prepared information is important. As we used to say, as somebody here used to say, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, right? So preparation is key.
Yeah, and according to our good friend Guy Cochran, he likes to say that, a lot of people don't know this. Eminem used to shoot weddings. The performer, Eminem, he used to shoot a lot of weddings. And his motto was that you only get one shot. Do not miss your chance to blow. The opportunity comes once in a lifetime, So
wonder where we've heard that before.
You got to be paying attention. The clues are all out there. I just want to say, if you want to help out with the show, go to officehours.global/volunteer, and you can also support the show. Office Hours is a 501c3, so you can donate at officehours.global/donate to help keep the lights on, as they say. Alexander, what's the next question?
This one's coming from David Brady, New York City, New York. So I recently moved from the Matrix Router of Sounddesk to Omnibus for intra computer audio routing. One oddity has been drift correction when dealing with Zoom on the virtual interfaces. What is it, and how should it be set?
Courtney.
Well, you need to set one in an aggregate situation where you got multiple sources. You need to pick one to be your master clock, and everything will try and then set Zoom drift correction to that master clock, and it'll do that by resampling or sample rate conversion if the sample rates are not the same. The problem is the sample rates can be the same, but if different sources are coming in, they have slightly different clocks, and they can drift over time. And so if you don't have a way of putting everybody on a master word clock, you can set that drift correction to try and resynchronize your incoming sound sources to a single source that is a master clock, and probably want to choose a source that is local with your video that's going to be your master source. So it's timed to a camera, let's say, that is the audio from that particular camera that's made it to that camera. They'll then choose as your master source. Or if you have a sync generator, you want to choose word clock out of that sync generator as your master source, so it can resync, and it'll hopefully keep the video from drifting out of sync with the audio coming from different sources, as each one has may have a slightly different clock rate. It also prevents buffer overrun, because if they're slightly different sample rates, it starts to fill up the buffer, and at one point the buffer will wrap around depending upon the size of the buffer, and you're going to get glitches or dropouts at that point. We hear that all the time in my audio right here, because the buffer overflows occasionally, and when it wraps around, it resets the buffer and you'll lose some packets. So beware of that, and try and make sure everybody is at the same sample rate on their audio, 48K preferably, and not 47956, which sometimes some screwy things change the sample rate of the audio to match NTSC 2398 frame rate, and that can be problematic and cause drift.
Alexander, next question, please.
All right, this one's from Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Can a YouTube channel handle 2 live streams at the same time if there are 2 different stream keys? I have a scheduled event on our channel at 7 p.m., but a live event at 6 may run a few minutes over. I'm using 2 different computers to stream.
Mickey, what say you?
Yeah, sure. That is we can stream to multiple YouTube events in the same channel at the same time with different stream keys. We regularly do this for some multi-language broadcasts on YouTube that at times go up to 30 or 40 events on the same channel for the different languages. So, yeah.
Jeff?
Yes, and I'll say there's really 2 issues to this. There's the technical, which yes, you can, and in fact, you'll see a lot of folks doing this now to have 2 distinct streams, one for horizontal layout, one for vertical layout, and then there's the audience considerations, which is it's the same channel, so is this closely related? Because now it's a totally different stream. If you end the first stream and ask, even if you promote on the 6 o'clock stream when it starts to end, hey, everyone, head over to the 7 o'clock, you're still going to lose people because that stream will end. So it's a consideration. It sounds like the 7 is already scheduled. So perhaps you, at that point, dual stream. In other words, you also stream the 7 o'clock event also to the 6 stream and let that keep going. But you're splitting your numbers, right? So your viewer numbers are going to be split either way. So some things to consider because you're just going to get drop off otherwise if you don't at least kind of cross promote. And one other thing I'll just point out while we're looking at this, so there's plenty of encoders that let you do this as Mickey suggested. There's a relatively new, just so folks are aware, from a few months ago that YouTube introduced their own what they call dual stream, and I can put the link to the docs if folks haven't seen this in the chat. But it lets you essentially, if you want, just stream once to YouTube, and then they will do it. Now there's an auto setting, which is just, hey, we're going to center crop on whatever the actual horizontal stream is. Or there's a manual where you can, and they say they're going to be kind of launching new layouts, but you can also, using their dual stream, use your own encoder for each, which lets you, of course, create a better vertical layout, especially if you have multiple guests and all that good stuff. So I think that's a good option, but definitely look at that. If the primary focus for a lot of folks is just to send the same stream to the different layouts.
Alexander, next question, please.
This one's coming in from Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York. Any recommendations for the most minimal in-ear monitor setup for keys and vocals for self-mixing and sending to the mixer? I usually run Mainstage on my MacBook.
Ronnie?
Yeah, this question is lacking some information for me to answer it correctly, but maybe a few of the other guys has more good answers or understand the question, since this is not my first language. But what I would recommend is something that we tend to be using all the time, and that is a small mixer of some sort. And I guess you have some sort of a mixer. This happens to be Allen and Heath T112 digital thing. And the sweet thing about this one is that it can be accessed through the network. It has a network connection, and that makes me have an iPad app. And as you can see, I have my in-ear mixer here. And in that app, I can choose which levels I'm going to add to my in-ears, if it's my guitar or I don't play a guitar, or my microphone or whatever sources I have coming into this system. It's, of course, how I understand the question. It's how are you going to do this for yourself? You need a mixer, and then you need an in-ear. And what I'm using as an in-ear is the cheapest one I could find that are actually using professional UHF frequencies. That's the Sennheiser what is it called? XSW IEM, and that is something that we add for some of the artists that are budget aware. Elsewhere, we use more expensive Shure or more expensive Sennheiser IEMs for that one. But for a single user like this, I would recommend some sort of a mixer where you can mix your signals and get them into your ears.
Mickey, what can you add?
Yeah, I would certainly if the monitor desk is a desk that has a companion application, a lot of Allen and Heath desks, as Ronnie mentioned, support self-mixing apps on mobile devices. Yamaha's do as well. A whole load of mixing desks support these. You can just get a bunch of iPads, get a bunch of used ones, or if you want to spring for a bunch of brand new iPads, you can do that. And assign permissions on each iPad. Like, say, if this is for the keyboard player, only allow them to adjust the keyboard player's mix bus, and so that they can adjust what goes into their in-ears. And in terms of simplicity for the actual monitoring system, there are in-ear systems that can just take it's a little box with that's powered off of AA or AAA batteries. Just stick an XLR in it, and it has a mini jack output on the other side, so you can give wired in-ear monitors to your musicians. That's certainly a lot simpler than running RF IEMs, because you don't have to do your frequency coordination and all that. But if you do want to go the IEM route, go with a system that can be frequency coordinated on a computer using, say, if it's a Shure system, something that works with Wireless Workbench, or I'm a big fan of an application called Soundbase that can coordinate frequencies across multiple brands at the same time. Go that route, as opposed to having to going with the much lower end ones, like, say, the Sennheiser G3 EW300 series IEMs, where you can only tune them on the front panel of each individual transmitter. Go with something that can be coordinated completely from a computer.
Marty, what can you add?
So Scott is saying that he wants to mix his own in-ears and mix his vocal and keyboards to the front of house. And using Mainstage to do that. So Mainstage is a software that's primarily used by musicians as a backing track player, a synthesizer, a tonal modification device to change the sound of their instrument. It's not primarily a mixer, which is what everybody here is recommending. To do in-ear monitors, now there's so much we don't know. We don't know what kind of front-of-house mixer there is. We don't know how big the band is or how many input channels are going to be required for you to mix, Scott. And so these are all important to know, because if the front-of-house mixer is a digital mixer, it is most likely capable of providing individually mixed musician feeds for their own either stage monitors or in-ears. And that would be the most beneficial thing for you to do, to mix yourself on stage and send a mix between your keyboards and your vocals. You cannot judge that balance adequately. You really can't. And what you're doing is you're taking away that control from the front of house mixer, which you don't want to do. You want to give the front of house mixer total control over both your keyboards and your vocals, for them to do tonal adjustments, to do dynamic adjustments, and to control the balance. So don't remove that capability from the front of house. Give that to them. For you to mix your own in-ears, if it's a small setup, you can set up a mixer next to you, preferably a digital mixer, that you can take feeds, share feeds that go to the front of house. Even front of house can send you individual feeds. So think along those lines, okay?
All right, so that's going to wrap it up for us today. I want to say happy birthday to Apple Computer. It's 50 years today. Thanks for that question. I sent it back. I know we're running out of time.
That's not an April Fool's thing, is it?
That is not April Fool's. Apple started on April 1st. The Talalik reversal, our friend Talalik has been doing a bunch of math in the background and realized that we probably would have traveled about 10,000 miles, a bunch of kilometers, 76 million bananas for scale. And once again, this is episode 2199. Hope y'all had fun. To the person who asked the question about weddings, let's go to after hours because I want to make sure that goes well. If anybody has any additional stuff they want to add about weddings, let's do that. So we're out. Roll the credits. 8 o'clock.
Yeah, but how do you mic the divorce? You know, that's comes up shortly.
that happens automatically. It's called a stenographer, and I believe it's required.
Yeah,
Right,
and
those
a
microphones
deposition
in the
for both
courtroom.
parties.
Come on, guys. Do we have to get so dark? By the way, there's a reception at Courtney's house this afternoon for the Apple 50th birthday. Thanks for doing that,
I think it all. Yeah, it was.
That's right. It's an open bar. That's what I heard.
Bill Gates bailed him out in August of '97. If he hadn't given him $150 million, they wouldn't be here today.
Only because of Gil Amelio.
That is true.
I was about to say, David Pogue's book tends to disagree with that being the thing that saves Apple, but that's 600 pages I want back. It was actually really good.
To the back-end crew, sorry. I tried. I didn't consider that the credits were going to be a minute long. So anyway,
I think you're getting held after class.
We got out a lot quicker than last week. So
Look
Doc
at this.
is pay.
The fake